welcome to the Sunday service. This Sunday we're going to do the meditation first. After the meditation, Steven Subodha is going to give a Dhamma talk. After Dhamma talk, question and answer. The last item is chanting. Right now, Venerable Chandasara is going to lead the meditation.
Good morning to everyone. This is the right time to practice loving kindness meditation. It's part of the sun service. Let's be seated in a comfortable posture at your convenience. So let's think in this way to practice loving kindness meditation in a very simple way, in a very practical way, in a very comfortable way. Think in 3 steps. First one, may all the living beings be physically healthy. Second step, may all the living beings be free from external danger or distortions, distractions. The third step is, may all the living beings be psychologically or mentally healthy. So we, as go on practicing loving kindness meditation, we repeat these 3 steps so it's easier. Let's practice now until we hear the bell sound. I'll repeat once again. May all the living beings be physically be healthy. May all the living beings be free from external danger. May all the living beings be psychologically healthy. Let's practice.
Thank you, Chandrasare. Now it's time to start Dhamma talk. As I mentioned earlier, today our speaker, Steven Subodha. I saw earlier he's online. I think, Subodha, you are ready?
Yes, Bhante.
All right, Subodha, thank you again being with us. You can start your Dhamma talk right now.
Thank you, Bhante. I pay homage to the Buddha. I pay homage to the Dhamma. I pay homage to the Sangha. Well, I hope everyone's doing well today. It's a pleasure to see you or your thumbnail on Zoom. Hopefully one day I'll get to see you and or your thumbnail in person. So today I have a particular theme in mind. Over the last few years, I've been asked a series of questions that all sometimes seem to me to be a very similar question, perhaps the same question, which is, how do I know I'm making progress on the path? And so that's the theme I want to explore today. How do we know we're making progress? Now, there are a lot of ways to go about answering this, a lot of ways we can investigate, but what I think is most fruitful is to take a step back and really understand why we're on the path in the first place. To have any measure of success or failure, to me, it seems you got to know why you're doing something in the first place. So with that in mind, I want to discuss the Devadaha Sutta. That's from I believe that's Samyutta Nikaya 22.2. And so in this particular sutta, it begins with a contingent of monks, a big group of monks that are looking to travel abroad, basically travel to other territories where the Buddha's teachings were unknown. And so in this sutta, these monks approach the Buddha and tell him their plans, that they want to go off to further territories in the subcontinent of India and go to places where the Buddha's teachings are unknown. And the Buddha nods and he says, okay, this is good. But I feel, though, that you should inform Sariputta. Have you informed him? And the monks say, no, Lord, we haven't informed Venerable Sariputta. And then the Buddha says, inform Sariputta, monks. Sariputta is wise, a great help to the monks who are his companions in the holy life. And so these monks in a big group go and walk towards where Sariputta was. And at the time, Sariputta was meditating under a tree. And they approach Sariputta, they exchange greetings and pleasantries, catching up as monks do, as anyone does. And they tell Sariputta the news, that they're planning on moving somewhere where the Buddha's teachings are unknown. And it's when he hears this, the Sariputta says, friends, in foreign lands there are wise nobles and Brahmins, householders and contemplatives. For the people there are wise and discriminating, who will question a monk. What is your teacher's doctrine? What does he teach? Have you listened well to the teachings, grasped them well, attended to them well, considered them well, penetrated them well by means of discernment, so that in answering you will speak in line with what the Blessed One has said, will not misrepresent the Blessed One with what is unfactual, will answer in line with the Dhamma, and no one whose thinking is in line with the Dhamma will have grounds to criticize you. And after posing this question to them, the monks pause and they look at each other and then they say, you know, Sariputta, You're so wise that we can imagine people walking from very far away to hear your teachings. So rather than us tell you, how about you tell us, right? Which is very, very wise of those monks in question, sort of dodge the bullet there and have Sariputta answer instead. And then so Sariputta obliges. He says, all right, I'll tell you. Please listen well. And so he begins posing these questions and answering them. So he supposes that these wise people, both householders and contemplatives, will ask these monks, what is your teacher's doctrine? What does he teach? And Sariputta says, thus asked, you should answer. Our teacher teaches the subduing of passion and desire. And then they might respond with another question. And your teacher teaches the subduing of passion and desire for what? Thus asked, you should answer. Our teacher teaches the subduing of passion and desire for form, for feeling, for perception, for fabrications. Our teacher teaches the subduing of passion and desire for consciousness. So you'll recognize those as the 5 aggregates, and I'll have more to say on that later. Seeing what danger does your teacher teach the subduing of passion and desire for consciousness and all the other aggregates, these people might ask. And then Sariputta says, thus asked, you should answer. When one is not free from passion, desire, love, thirst, fever, and craving for form and all the other aggregates, then from any change and alteration in that form or all the aggregates, there arises sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. When one is not free from passion, for feeling, for perception, for fabrications, when one is not free from passion, desire, love, thirst, fever, and craving for consciousness, then from any change and alteration, there arises sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, despair. Seeing this danger, our teacher teaches the subduing of passion and desire. And then they might ask, seeing what benefit does your teacher teach the subduing of passion and desire? Thus asked, you should answer. When one is free from passion, desire, love, thirst, fever, craving, then with any change and alteration in these aggregates, there does not arise any sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, or despair. When one is free from these passions, when one is free from desire and craving, then with any change and alteration in that consciousness, there does not arise any sorrow, lamentation, pain. And after giving these responses to these monks, he stops playing this back and forth game and then simply speaks to the monks. He says, friends, if one who entered and remained in unskillful mental qualities were to have a pleasant abiding in the here and now, unthreatened, undespairing, unfeverish, and on the breakup of the body after death could expect a good destination, that is nibbana, then the Blessed One would not advocate the abandoning of unskillful mental qualities. But because one who enters and remains in unskillful mental qualities has a stressful abiding in the here and now, threatened, despairing, and feverish, and on the breakup of the body does not achieve nibbana, that is why the Blessed One advocates the abandoning of unskillful mental qualities. And then he ends up saying the same thing about skillful mental qualities. If the Buddha taught, if it was true that skillful mental qualities could be cultivated and we would still be threatened, despaired, and feverish in this life and have no nibbana to look forward to, then the Buddha wouldn't teach it this way, right? That's why the Blessed One advocates entering into skillful mental qualities, because that is the guarantee of having skillful mental qualities. So we see in this very short sutta the essence of the Buddha's teachings, because Sariputta gives a very concrete and simple to remember answer. The Buddha's teachings are for dispassion, to abandon desire and craving. And it's done through cultivating skillful mental qualities, developing them, and abandoning unskillful mental qualities, setting them aside and eradicating them. That's the essence of the teachings. And all of that takes place in the mind and in the heart. Now, last week, I remember hearing someone ask a question about refuge, right? And I wanted to address that because I think it's important to understand in light of these teachings why refuge becomes important. So we see in this sutta, the Theravada Sutta, that all of the training that we do is for dispassion, to subdue passion and desire, and to cultivate mental qualities. But the thing is, when we hear it that way, when we hear mental qualities, we can sometimes think that all of this happens in a very intellectual way, that it happens in a very super philosophical way. And it's important to remember that in the Pali language, chitta, the word that's used for mind, also means heart. So we're taught again and again the importance of taking refuge. And if we understand it the wrong way, we might assume that the refuge is on the outside, that refuge takes place in outside forms, outside feelings, outside ideas and concepts. And yet the Buddha's teachings is always showing us to turn inward into the mind and the heart, which is why you have some teachers, for example, like Longpo Cha, saying that the heart is a refuge, or sometimes the most important refuge, or sometimes the only real refuge. And there's a real reason why he would say that. For starters, Longpo Cha or Ajahn Cha is very familiar with the idea that in Pali, chitta is both the mind and the heart. That in the Pali language, it's the same thing. There is no distinction between mind and heart. That what we develop, what we cultivate, we might say is the heart. And read that way, we see something, I think, especially beautiful and important to remember as Westerners. A lot of the time, people will quote the Dhammapada, and they'll talk about it in terms of qualities of mind, which isn't wrong. But if we understand that chitta can also mean heart, we might read the opening lines of the Dhammapada as follows. Phenomena are preceded by the heart, ruled by the heart, made of the heart. If you speak or act with a corrupted heart, then suffering follows you as the wheel of the cart, the track of the ox that pulls you. Phenomena are preceded by the heart, ruled by the heart, made of the heart. If you speak or act with a calm, bright heart, then happiness follows you like a shadow that never leaves. So seen in this way, the heart begins as our first refuge, in the sense that we have to be open to exploring reality and exploring truth and wanting to quest for a secure happiness. And then we end up finding the Buddha as an example of true and lasting and permanent happiness. We find the Dhamma as his teachings, and we find the Sangha as a group that can support our spiritual growth, our maturation, our development of these qualities. And we take those into the heart. We take them inside us, and it's there that any change happens. Sometimes, especially when Ajahn Chah was teaching this, it was very common to assume that Buddhism is about memorization. We got the lists of this, the list of that, the 5 of those, the 8 of this, the 10 of that. And if we think about it as just rote memorization, then we forget the value of turning inward and really measuring our hearts. Ajahn Chah also said that the heart is the only book worth reading. And the reason why he said that is pretty straightforward. The heart is where we turn into to see those mental qualities, to see how they develop, to see how they rise up, to see how they change over time. We can even see this in the way the Buddha approaches the Four Noble Truths. A lot of people assume this is also like a really intellectual thing, that it's simply grasping a kind of knowledge. There is suffering, it arises, it passes away. Hey, and also there's this Eightfold Path. But there's another way of looking at the Four Noble Truths as duties to perform, as activities that need to be done to find release. We can see the first noble truth needs to be comprehended. We need to understand dissatisfaction and stress. We need to see how it comes about. We need to see how it arises, and we need to abandon what makes it arise. The third noble truth, we need to actually cultivate those things that make suffering go away, that subdue them and subdue craving and dissatisfaction. And we develop that through the Eightfold Path. But the Eightfold Path isn't just an external thing. It's not only a matter of following precepts and memorizing rules and memorizing teachings, but taking them deep into the heart and looking there. So to go back now to that an initial question, the theme of today's talk, how do we know we're developing anything in this path? How do we know we're improving on the path? How do we know we're making any growth or progress? And it's often the case that people assume any progress they make, they're going to see on the outside. They're going to see it when they talk to others. They're going to see it when they go, to Thanksgiving with the family, and they think they're going to see it out on the street when someone cuts them off the road. And yes, you might see it there. But the real test is in meditation. The real proving ground of how these qualities develop is when you sit in meditation. One of my big gripes about the way modern meditation is often taught is how it's this cut and paste cookie cutter thing. We all think that we can just hit a particular, audio track on, Insight Meditation, or go onto YouTube, or we can go to a retreat where literally they just press play on a tape. And it's the same meditation for everyone, the same cookie cutter techniques. You're going to breathe the same way. You're going to do this the same way. Everyone, rank and file, same. And you go into autopilot. You don't really think about what you're doing or why you're doing it. You don't think about what kind of qualities, right? And I'm not trying to put thoughts into your head. If you haven't done this, by all means. But I have seen it many times with many meditators, is that they go to these retreats where they just hit play on a tape and everyone just does the same meditation. Or someone takes a script and reads from it and everyone does the same meditation. And it's this rote, automatic thing that no one's really tuned into. And then you ask, well, am I making improvements? Like, is anything changing? And someone will answer like, well, you just do the same meditation. It'll take care of itself. Just do the same thing over and over and over again. Yeah, but this time this thing happened. Yeah, ignore it. Just same thing, rinse and repeat every day. And like, maybe you'll see changes, like maybe you'll be a little kinder to, a relative. Maybe you'll be a bit more patient, at the DMV. Maybe. Promises. But that's why it's important to remember that the heart as a refuge ends up being something dynamic and living. The reason why the heart is a refuge is because you take the lessons in that Buddhism offers you as skills, as tools, as techniques to strengthen you, to give you something to do in meditation. That meditation is not some automatic paint by numbers sort of thing where you just follow the steps every time, regardless of what's happening. that there actually needs to be directed thought, that there needs to be evaluation. And then eventually things settle in such a way, but that doesn't mean that the mind turns off. Even if you study the jhanas, you see that the fourth jhana is the perfection of mindfulness and equanimity. And mindfulness, the way it's taught today, is this very basic, bare awareness sort of thing. But that's not what we see in the suttas when we study them. And it's not what we see when we talk to very advanced meditators either. That sati, mindfulness, always has other qualities alongside it, like ardency and alertness. And sati itself refers to memory and the way we keep the Dharma in mind as we meditate. So that means even in these higher states of meditation, there is still this reflective quality that's looking, evaluating, discerning what's happening in the meditation. So that's why if someone asks me, well, am I making any progress on the path? The first thing I ask them is, well, how's your meditation going, right? It's not, hey, how patient were you at the DMV? It's not, how'd Thanksgiving go? It's really looking at the meditation, how it's unfolding, day in and day out. That when you sit to meditate, when all of us sit to meditate, we are given tools like mindfulness and concentration, but how are we applying them in a useful way? And then how do we take those lessons that we get from meditation and then apply them to real life situations? You know, there's this imbalance, I think, that many of us have, where we assume that meditation is just this thing that we do, and maybe it'll have some positive effects on our life. When it's far more connected than that. And if anything, what we do in our daily lives has a great impact on our meditation. And then our meditation has a great impact on our lives. So how do we see this progress? How do we mark this progress? We do the same work that the Buddha had to do. We look at the qualities of our mind as we sit in meditation, the qualities of our heart, which might be more important. I think sometimes it's important to pull down away from this intellect and really come into touch with what we're feeling, which in Buddhism is also the mind. But how do we feel when we meditate? The paint by numbers style, where you hit play on a tape and then someone comes in with actual concerns and questions like, well, just play the tape again. How does that address what you're actually feeling? When you sit down and meditate, does the mind feel scattered? Does it feel lost? Is it going and grasping at things? Well, good. You're able to see that. What do you do with that? How do you bring that back to something more pleasant, something more peaceful? You'll notice that in this sutta I was sharing with you, the idea is that there's this concept of a pleasant abiding in the here and now. That's one of the benefits of proper meditation. They were able to find something that's really worthwhile, worth doing right now in a good way. The idea that meditation is this, gritting your teeth and sitting there and suffering through it, and then maybe there's a promise of something better. See what you can do in the present moment to make it better now. What's happening in the body? What's happening with the breath? What's happening with the mind? What's happening with the heart? I think a lot of the time, the way we live with so much activity, that we're not connected to our hearts. I think that's why a lot of us reach out to meditation anyways, is to connect with that heart again, to make it a book worth reading, to really delve into its pages, to learn its mysteries, and to align ourselves with something worth feeling. We want a pleasant abiding here and now. And it's easy to measure. When you meditate, is it a pleasant abiding? Is it something that you want to return to again and again? Or is it like flossing? You do it because the dentist told you. And that takes real work. That's why it's cultivation. Chitta bhavana, heart cultivation or mind cultivation. It ends up being that because you got to return and really, really dig up the soil, look around, turn it into something. You know, many of us have a full yard of weeds and we want to turn it into a beautiful garden. So again, how do we see that progress? We check in time and time again. So I do want to reiterate this concept of the heart and phenomena, because there is this current understanding in Buddhism that we're looking for a special kind of insight, a special kind of knowledge, and that when we meditate in just the right way, it's like we're like struck with lightning. This thing opens up and all the mysteries of the world are unfolded before us. And I think if we wait on that before we think we have found any measure of happiness or peace, then we're always going to feel lost when we meditate. That the Buddha teaches this as a gradual path because we slowly over time build up our happiness, build up our peace by developing these good mental qualities. That it's a gradual thing that is about our behavior, about our relationships, and not about a special kind of knowledge. In Buddhism, we use knowledge for the sake of dispassion. We use knowledge for the sake of abandoning unskillful mental qualities and cultivating skillful mental qualities. But the goal is not some amazing, like all-penetrating insight. There might be, but that's not the goal. The goal is, as Sariputta says at the beginning of the sutta, that the goal of the path in its entirety is to eliminate suffering, the subduing of passion and desire. And that's what eliminates suffering. And that work happens inside. And if we want to mark the progress, we mark it through meditation in a way that's active and dynamic, not something static, not something rote, not paint by numbers. Meditation requires our active participation. And that's why it's helpful to, for starters, meditate more, but to go beyond simple memorization, but actual application of the Buddha's teachings. It's not enough to say, well, I follow the precepts, that's good. And like, I know that some things are unskillful, but like, well, how do unskillful things make you feel? How do skillful qualities make you feel? How do unskillful qualities make you feel? Really feel it in your heart, the full weight of it. Are you pulling a cart or are you followed by your shadow? That's the real measure of progress on the path. So I think I'm going to stop there and open it up for questions if there are any, or comments or any other things you want to discuss about the Dharma. I don't want to limit it only to this discussion if you have other questions. Thank you.
Any question? Any question or any comment? Or
I think Selvin is raising his hand.
yes, Sylvain.
Yes, hi, good morning. Thank you, Steven, for such a lovely talk. You know, one of the things that I wrote down as you were speaking was meditation is to go inward. And basically, I think that's something that I forget. And then when you were talking about bringing the heart into the equation, it reminds me of the times that I have meditated and I'm all in my mind thinking, am I doing this right? And then I just basically get in my mind, I'm not doing it right, etc. And when you speak of the heart, I mean, I don't know if it's Western idea that we divide things up, but I mean, it's not just the heart and the mind that go together. It's everything within our bodies, and sort of being connected to all of that. For instance, I get very nervous when I talk, so I'm aware that my hands are sweaty, and that's sort of, to me, that's what meditation does. It makes me go inward and makes me aware not just of what I'm thinking, but what I'm feeling and what I'm sensing. I believe one of the suttas is basically about meditating, bringing awareness to all the body senses, and that includes the heart. So I just also wanted to point out that the other thing that I thought about, I think of the mind as the squeaky wheel, and it's sort of kind of putting oil, meditating, kind of putting oil in that squeaky wheel, so we can kind of be aware of the other wheels that keep us going. So I just wanted to share that because I thought it was very good that you mentioned the heart, but I also like to add that with the heart, it goes the rest of the body too. So thank you.
That was beautifully said. You're so right. In fact, the Satipatthana Sutta, I think, is probably the one you had in mind, and if not, several others, because it's all over the place. But Satipatthana, that's one of those things that's offered to the general public, the general audience, as mindfulness, right? But then you read the Satipatthana Sutta, and the Buddha is talking about many, many avenues of investigation and many avenues of development and cultivation. And you're right, that it's all of the body, all of the mind, all of the heart, and recognizing how connected they are. That the Satipatthana has these four avenues of exploration, you know, body, feelings, mental objects, the Dhamma, all sorts of things like that. You're absolutely right. And I agree that they're connected. If anything, that's why breath meditation would work in the first place. Because if the breath were this thing alone unto itself, disconnected from body and mind and heart, then what good would breath meditation do for someone who uses that as their main object of meditation, like I do? And it's because it's connected in the way you just said that absolutely, that's why it becomes beneficial. That's why it becomes a good focal point for that entire development of body, mind, and heart. So yeah, thank you. I agree wholeheartedly with what you said. No pun intended. And then I don't know if there's any particular order, but I see Lauren.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk. I just wanted to say that it was something I really needed to hear because, a lot of times I feel like my practice isn't working and I get frustrated, and it's such a simple question. But like you said, if something's not working, ask yourself why. Like, what am I doing wrong? And I do fall into the trap of getting way too dependent on cognitive activity and not thinking about what's in the heart, or thinking about them being these two separate entities when, the Buddha's line of thinking is that they're really not separate at all. Like you said, the breath wouldn't work as a focal point for meditation if there wasn't that connection of here and here, So it was exactly what I needed to hear today. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Yeah, thank you. And it's such a common thing. I've given talks in the past where I've brought up my past experiences with meditation, where I thought it was like a really exerting activity where because that word concentration, so I'd be concentrating, there'd be like beads of sweat going down my head. And I also learned a very cookie cutter form of meditation for years and years and struggled against it. And it took a long time until I found a teacher who said, well, if something's wrong, change it. Like if the breath is a certain way, change it. If there's feelings in the body a certain way, change it. If the mind is acting in a certain way, change it. And that's exactly what we find when we return to the suttas as well, is that the Buddha doesn't say, well, yeah, there's these unwholesome mental qualities and they're just kind of there and then they go away. No. The skillful effort in Buddhism is when you see something unwholesome arising, you direct the mind back to something wholesome. So if there's a lot of anger coming up, what do? Just let anger hang out and chill, take a spot on the couch? No. You direct your mind towards love, compassion, right? That ends up being something better to do with your time than simply being aware, right? Aware is good. Aware might even be like a good step for a while. But at a certain point, we're looking to develop something, looking to change something. And the Buddha gives us so many, tools to do that with. Yeah. So thank you again. Yeah, I'm so glad this was helpful for you. Vincent. You're still muted, Vincent.
Good morning, Subodha. Thank you very much. Yeah, I've read before that it's really not good to characterize the practice of meditation as that of being enlightenment, because not everybody's going to experience that. And that having been said, it could lead to a lot of frustration. I think some 12-step programs do the same. They talk about having a spiritual enlightenment. And I've actually seen people get very frustrated because they haven't they haven't been able to experience that. And it's not going to be the case for everybody. So thank you. I think that's what you had to say.
Yeah, I will add to that a little though, in that I think it's perfectly fine to think that meditation has a goal. It's something worth pursuing. And so I do have great confidence at this point in my life that the path that the Buddha lays out for us is one that leads to unbinding, nibbana, or nirodha, just the actual real release. But he also said it was a gradual path. And he also said that it was something good at the beginning, good at the middle, and good at the end, which means it's not something that rewards us at the end of all this struggle, but is something in itself that is at the beginning. The moment we begin practicing the proper way, becomes a pleasant abiding, becomes something we can enjoy right now, that we can enjoy at the beginning of our path as Buddhists, and in the middle and at the end. That along the way, there is peace and happiness, tastes of nibbana along the way. And that's worth cultivating, because we get little glimpses of what life can be like. We get glimpses of what a free mind is like, or a free heart, freeing the heart. And we get to see it along the way. And so it's when we're racing towards a finish line when we don't need to, that I think that happens the way you described, Vincent. When we join a martial arts class and we expect to be a black belt in 18 months, even if they give us that black belt, we probably haven't earned it, but we need to find the joy and delight in the path along each step. Yeah. And then I see John.
Hi, Steven. Thanks for your talk. I always love your talks here. And I do have a question on that too, but on this one, I've been meditating for decades now, and my mind is always jumping to the past or to the future. It's very rare that I'm concentrated on the breath. I always try to bring it back to the breath, but it's just constantly jumbled. And I've taken the precepts and I try my best. It's impossible to fully adhere to them on every level, but I'm always, trying to work on them. So it's not like I'm running around like full of intoxicants or things that would like scramble it, more than just the day-to-day life stuff that we all have to deal with. So I guess the question is, and I've always used the same technique, right? Except when I'm on retreats, which was back in the day. It's been a long time since I've been on one where you do like chanting and walking, and that does crack through the thoughts. I find when I'm chanting in a group, you hit certain harmonies and it kind of breaks through the clutter of your mind, and you're kind of you feel a vibration running through you, almost like a buzz. And that does bring me to the present. And there have been those occasional meditations where you do feel really, and I don't want to get attached to those states, but like where you do feel really in the present. And I guess the question is, do I just keep, is it just keep it up? I've had one meditation teacher tell me you just needed to have like every month, like take a day in silence and unplug, which I have not been doing. That's kind of hard to do. Do I need to do retreats? I haven't done a retreat in years. Or just keep at it, or maybe try a different technique, like you were saying, like maybe I need to try something other than counting the breath. And then my second question was, do you talk at other institutions too? Because I've only caught you here, and I always love your Dharma talks.
Well, I'll answer the last one. Yes, here only, especially with things the way they are on, with Zoom and all that. There were a couple times I used to speak at a few other places. The Melrose location of Against the Stream I used to speak at before it turned into Inside LA West or whatever direction it is, or East or something. Now they've separated it. But yeah, mostly I talk here. Now you asked some very, very important questions. And so I'll touch on one of them first. Before we get into how you might change your meditation, there are all the things that happen outside of meditation as well. And so one of the things I had alluded to was the fact that we often talk about how meditation affects our daily living, but we don't talk about how daily living affects our meditation. And so it's not the case that you need to go on retreat all the time, although it is helpful. But why is retreat helpful? And oftentimes it's because it separates us from the things we usually spend our time doing, and the kind of activities we're usually in, and the kind of stimuli we subject ourselves to. And all of that plays into how well we meditate. If we're going out with friends a lot of the time, we might need some way of decompressing before we meditate. See, people assume that meditation is its own form of decompression, and it kind of is. But there is something to be said about allowing the mind to incline itself towards stillness and seclusion before we even begin meditating. Because if you begin meditating with a lot of that energy from the day in you still, then it's going to be reflected in the meditation. And you're probably going to spend the first 15 minutes of it trying to unwind and get the mind to settle. Whereas if you find ways of scheduling your day, I'm not saying completely have no life or activity. I think it's very difficult for a layperson to do. But to give yourself kind of bookends before and after meditation, where you give yourself chances for the mind to incline itself towards it. So you're not stimulating the mind before you're meditating. In fact, I would say have some nice quiet time before the meditation and after. Maybe do some walking. That's usually
I usually
helpful.
do it right when I wake up, before I look at my phone or get the thoughts jumbled. I pray and recite the precepts, and then I meditate.
Yeah, that's perfect. But if you want, you can also try different parts of the day and see how that affects your meditation as well. But I will say the other thing we can talk about is what happens during meditation. And one of the things that I have found is that if I'm allowing myself to get bored, my mind's going to wander. Right? If I'm just breathing and it's just the breath coming in and out and just in and out, and I'm not really paying attention to it, then that becomes an issue, right? Because then there's nothing for the mind to want to settle on, because it's just meditation. It knows what meditation's like. You do it every morning, right? When you wake up, you chant, you meditate. Your mind knows it. Like, I already know how this is going to go. I meditate, and then it wants to go one way or the other. That's something I've experienced myself, where I'm in my meditation, but I kind of know what's going to happen, right? So I sit down and all right, I'm going to meditate. And then the mind begins wandering, goes to one thought, to the other, goes to the past, future, or wherever, right? And I think you had asked a version of this question before, where my advice was like, well, what's happening with the breath? And the reason why I had brought that up was because if we have an interest in the breath, and we take enough of our awareness and concentration into the breath and begin breathing in a way that begins to feel pleasurable and good, we can take those feelings and spread them throughout the body. And truly, we get to a point where we're meditating with the entire body in our awareness, with that energy in the breath delighting us. The Buddha even teaches that when meditating in this way, we give rise to piti and sukha. Some people call it rapture and peace. There are other translations, but the idea is that there's a way of making the in the moment, the present moment meditation pleasurable enough that the mind is less likely to want to leap off in another direction. So that is why I would recommend something like that, of seeing if there's a way of breathing in a pleasurable way that relaxes the body and makes the mind more likely to stay there. with the breath as it's breathing throughout the whole body. So I would say, give it a shot. If it doesn't work, then we can always try again with some other advice. But that's something that helped me a lot. And hopefully,
and that's just a concentration thing, just trying to turn your breath into pleasure. It's just a decision.
It's a way of staying engaged. It's a directed thought and evaluation. It's not just passively observing the breath, but directing it in such a way that it creates sensations in the body.
By following where it's hitting as it enters you and leaves.
Yeah.
Okay.
And undoing any blockages you feel until your awareness can fill the whole body.
That's cool.
Yeah. So hopefully that helps in some way. And
it's kind of a visualization.
It can be. That's one way of approaching it. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steven. It's a great talk and good discussion. And we don't have time right now. I think we have to stop. And we go to chant right now, page 4 and page 10. By the way, next Sunday, Reverend Kusala is going to give a Dhamma talk. Hope you will all join next time also. Again, thank you again for everybody. Namo tasse bhagavatu arahato samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavatu arahato samma Namo tasse bhagavatu arahato samma sambuddhasse. Buddham saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangham saranam gacchami. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to endeavor. Deluding passions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them all. Dharma gates are limitless. I vow to study them all. Buddha's way is supreme. I vow to attain it. May suffering ones be suffering free. When the first of fearless be, may the grieving shadow grief, and the sick find health relief. Giri Pangdu Poka Unyanu Nyadang Buchungi Chungi Yadang Tabang Bang Nindi Kupangdu Poka Unadeng Chungi Chungi Yadam Tadandam Ningidu Kongyodu Poka Unane Yadam Chungi Chungi Yadam Om Mani Padme Thank you again. Thank you all the monks and thank you Asan and thank you all the members. May all be well and happy. Thank you again.
Hmm.